Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is Life, Liberty, and Levin, and I have a great guest, Rick Harrison. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Rick Harrison just survived betrayals and heartbreaks no one saw coming. The man behind the gold and silver pawn shop.
Little bit of job here. I started buying and selling stuff. Basically educated myself. And then I'd always been buying and selling stuff. My dad had a little coin shop, and I wanted a pawn shop.
And one of reality TV's biggest hits has lived through tragedies and secrets the cameras never showed. So what really happened behind the scenes over the last 16 years? And what shocking event in January 2024 changed everything for him and his family? Stay with us as we reveal what happened to Rick. The old man was the foundation of everything. To understand what Rick Harrison has lost, you have to understand what the old man was. Richard Benjamin Harrison was not just a character on a television show. He was the reason the business existed in the first place. He was a United States Navy veteran who moved his family to Las Vegas in 1981 and opened a small 300-square-foot second-hand coin shop on Las Vegas Boulevard South. Rick was 16 years old. He worked in the store during the day and repossessed cars at night because that was the kind of family they were. Nobody sat still, everybody worked, and you did what needed doing without a lot of discussion about whether you wanted to. By 1989, Richard and Rick had converted the store into a full pawn shop, which required a specific license that was restricted by a Las Vegas city ordinance. Rick called the city statistician every single week to track the city's population growth toward the threshold that would open a new license window. That is the level of commitment and attention that built what became the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. The show premiered in 2009, and Richard Harrison was 73 years old. He was slow in ways that age makes you slow, and sharp in ways that a lifetime in the pawn business makes you sharp. He had an opinion about everything, delivered with the specific confidence of a man who had been right about things for long enough to stop worrying about whether other people agreed. Fans loved him immediately and completely, not because he was performing, but because he was not performing. He was genuinely that person. He had retired from the day-to-day operations of the shop by 2017 as his health deteriorated. On June 25, 2018, Richard Harrison died from Parkinson's disease. He was 77 years old. Rick posted to Instagram the same day, "Today I lost a friend, a father, a teacher, and so much more," he wrote. "He was my hero, and I was fortunate to get a very cool old man as my dad." The show went on. The shop went on. But the man who had called every week to track the city's population until a pawn license opened up was gone. And what came next inside the Harrison family was not the clean grief of a loss accepted and processed. It was the beginning of something much more complicated. Rick had lost his father, the man who built everything they had together. Any son would grieve that. But within 4 years of his father's death, Rick Harrison was being sued in a Clark County District Court by his own mother for something that, if the lawsuit's allegations were true, suggested he had been doing it for much longer than 4 years. What exactly did his mother claim he had done? His mother sued him for something nobody saw coming. Joanne Harrison had been married to Richard for 58 years. She had helped build the business that became the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop from its earliest days as a 300-square-foot coin store. She was not a bystander in the creation of what became Pawn Stars. She was there from the beginning, through the moves to different locations, through the years of calling the city statistician, through everything that happened before the cameras arrived. And according to the lawsuit she filed in February 2022, the moment she was most vulnerable, lying in a hospital bed in a coma, sometime around 2000 or 2001, was the moment Rick allegedly had her sign over her 51% ownership interest in the pawn shop. The lawsuit was specific and brutal in its details. Joanne Harrison, 81 years old when the filing was made, alleged that she had been hospitalized in the ICU at Valley Hospital when someone placed documents in front of her for signature. She later alleged that she had not fully understood what she was signing, and that she only learned what had happened after a subsequent argument with Rick. Her husband, Richard, had apparently told her at that point not to worry, that Rick would not do anything to harm her, and that she should let Rick look after her shares and trust the family. She trusted the family. She waited 20 years. And then Richard died in 2018, and the payments that had been coming to her started shrinking. $25,000 a month through most of 2018 and 2019, reduced to $20,000. Then it stopped entirely in March 2020, which was the month the COVID pandemic began. She did not receive payments for 6 months across 2021. And a $3 million loan had been secured using assets she considered hers, taken out without her knowledge or consent. She was 80 years old when these payments stopped. She needed $15,000 a month for medical care. Joanne also alleged she was entitled to ownership percentages across multiple family businesses: 47.5% of the pawn shop, 50% of G&S Pawn, 35% of Harrison Properties, and 100% of a company called Jorich. She sought a restraining order to stop Rick from selling or moving assets while the case was pending. She wanted an accounting of all the finances she claimed she had been denied access to. She wanted unspecified damages and the reinstatement of her monthly payments, which she needed for medical care that cost up to $15,000 a month. Rick denied the allegations completely. His spokesperson said he had not known the lawsuit was coming. He publicly stated that the allegations were false and that his elderly mother was being manipulated by people who did not have her best interests at heart. The lawsuit worked its way through the legal system over the following years, while Rick continued doing the show, doing the spin-offs, maintaining his public persona. Joanne Harrison died in November 2025 at 85, hospitalized in Las Vegas. The lawsuit between them was never publicly resolved. Rick declined further comment on her death, describing it as a private matter. And then, on top of all of that, in January 2024, something happened that Rick Harrison has described as the worst thing that has ever happened to him. If you do not know what it is, you need to hear it in full. The son he could not save. Adam Harrison was Rick's second son, born to his first wife, Kim. Unlike his brother Corey, who became part of the Pawn Stars cast and built his own celebrity identity within the show's ecosystem, Adam had no interest in being on television. He worked there for a period, quietly, off camera. He later became a plumber. He built a life that existed at a deliberate distance from the fame his father and brother had achieved. According to Corey, Adam simply did not want to be on TV. That was the whole explanation. He was not performing modesty or hiding from anything specific. He just wanted a different life than the one the cameras offered. He wanted to be a regular person. In a family where being regular had become structurally impossible, that desire made him the most grounded of them all, and the most invisible to the public, and ultimately the most vulnerable. The different life was not without its own darkness. Rick Harrison has spoken about Adam's struggles with drugs in interviews that are difficult to listen to, not because they are dramatic, but because they are so tired. The tiredness of a parent who has tried everything and watched it fail and tried again. Rick Harrison put his son in rehab so many times that the number itself has become too painful to specify. He tried, he kept trying, he paid for treatment repeatedly, and Adam kept getting better and then falling back, because that is what fentanyl-era addiction does. It is not a character failing that can be addressed with love and money. It is a chemistry problem that love and money cannot reliably solve. Adam Harrison was found unresponsive in his apartment by his landlord on January 19, 2024. He had not been seen since January 17th. He was 39 years old. The Clark County Coroner's Office confirmed that he died from fentanyl and methamphetamine toxicity. His death was ruled accidental. Rick confirmed it to Fox News Digital within days. I can confirm Adam died from a fentanyl overdose. The fentanyl crisis in this country must be taken more seriously. The statement was controlled, the kind of thing a man puts out when he is still too deep inside the shock to say what he actually feels. What he actually felt came out later, slowly, over the course of interviews where the controlled exterior cracked enough to let the real damage show. He posted a photograph of himself with Adam at a restaurant. Just the two of them at a table, a regular meal, the kind of image that exists in every family's phone and means nothing until it becomes the last one. "You'll always be in my heart," Rick wrote. "I love you, Adam." The post had none of the usual Rick Harrison energy, none of the sharpness and confidence that had made him a television personality. It was just a man writing something true about his dead son on Instagram because there was nothing else to do. Pawn Stars was already in production on season 23 when Adam died. The production continued. Adam's death was not addressed on the show. The family announced there would be no further comment. Rick said what he had to say to the press, and then kept saying it in the months that followed because the fentanyl crisis kept producing more families in the same position, and he had decided that doing nothing with the platform he had was a choice he was not willing to make. The grief that comes with losing a child to fentanyl is not something that resolves. It lives in you permanently, getting quieter sometimes and louder other times, but never leaving. Rick Harrison has been carrying it publicly while running a business and doing a television show and fighting a lawsuit from his own mother and burying his father and going through multiple divorces. How does a person hold all of that at the same time? And what does Rick Harrison's life actually look like right now? The show, the hiatus, and the family that kept shrinking. Pawn Stars ran for 23 seasons on the History Channel. It was not the highest-rated show on television, but it was one of the most consistently watched, built on a format that was almost impossible to get wrong. People bringing interesting things, Rick and his family deciding whether they were worth what the owners thought. The slow negotiation toward a number that neither side was completely happy with. It made the Harrisons famous in the specific and permanent way that years of weekly television make people famous. They became furniture in the living rooms of tens of millions of homes, comfortable and familiar and reliable in ways that scripted television rarely manages to be. At its peak, the show was drawing over 8 million viewers per episode. The gold and silver pawn shop on Las Vegas Boulevard became an actual tourist destination, the kind of place people drove across multiple states to visit, where lines formed outside before the doors opened because people wanted to stand in the room they had been watching on television. Rick Harrison had not set out to build a landmark. He had set out to build a pawn shop. The landmark was a side effect that turned into an empire. By 2025, the show was on indefinite hiatus. The History Channel contract had ended, and there was no new deal in place. Corey Harrison told the Las Vegas Review-Journal that he could not play another season, that he and his co-stars had all been playing characters, and that the past few years had been rough. He had moved to Tulum, Mexico. He was building a new life at a geographic distance from everything the show represented. Rick was no longer working full-time at the shop. He was still on television through the spin-off Pawn Stars Do America, still doing events, still maintaining the public version of himself. In February 2025, he and Chumlee launched a podcast called Pawn After Dark, which he described as a chance to talk about behind-the-scenes stories without the constraints of network production. His personal life had gone through its own turbulence across the same years that all of this was happening professionally and within the family. His first marriage to Kim, with whom he had Corey and Adam, and whose years with Rick were the foundation of the family the show was built around, ended in separation in 2011. He married Deanna Burdett in 2013 in a ceremony in Laguna Beach, where Danny Coker from Counting Cars served as the officiant and Chumlee was the ring bearer. That marriage lasted until 2020, when Rick filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. He married Amanda Palmer in 2021, and that marriage ended in 2023. And then, in 2024, he began dating Angie Polushkin, a Las Vegas nurse. He got engaged to her on March 6, 2025, and they married on January 3, 2026, at a Little White Wedding Chapel in Las Vegas. Rick Harrison has also been floating the idea of a political career, which is the kind of thing that seems like a detour until you understand that for someone who has spent his professional life assessing value and negotiating outcomes, the move to public policy is not as large a leap as it looks from the outside. He endorsed Donald Trump publicly. He discussed possibly running for Senate in Nevada in 2023 and 2024, telling the Las Vegas Review-Journal he had been approached by many people in the party and that he never says never. His advocacy on the fentanyl crisis has been consistent and vocal since Adam's death. But there is a detail about how Rick Harrison processes all of this that might be the most revealing thing of all. What does he actually say when someone asks him directly how he is doing? What he said when nobody was managing the message. The interview with Graham Bensinger, released in early 2025, is the closest thing to Rick Harrison being unguarded. Bensinger is a long-form interviewer who does not do quick hits or sound bites. He sits with people and lets conversations develop over time, and the people who agree to do his show generally understand that the format will require them to actually say something. Rick Harrison agreed to do it more than a year after Adam's death, and what he said was raw in ways that his public statements in the immediate aftermath had not been. "I think about him every day," he said about Adam. That was the first thing. Not a prepared statement about the fentanyl crisis, or a policy argument or a line that had been tested in a green room. Just the flat, honest truth of what it is like to have lost your son. He thought about him every day. He described the rehab visits, the hope each time, and the fall each time in a way that communicated the accumulated exhaustion of a parent who had tried for years to fix something that could not be fixed by trying harder. "When you lose a kid," he said, "you second-guess everything." He paused. Everything. The specific weight of that sentence is not something you can explain to someone who has not experienced a loss that comes with the specific cruelty of wondering what you could have done differently. Because with a fentanyl overdose, unlike a car accident or a cancer diagnosis, there is always something you can point to. There is always a decision that could have been made differently. The second-guessing never has an ending because the regret never runs out of material to work with. Should he have made him stay in rehab longer the last time? Should he have called more? Should he have visited more? Should he have been different in some way that would have produced a different outcome on January 19th, 2024? The answer to every one of those questions is unknowable. The questions still come every day. There is nothing worse than losing a kid. That was how he ended it. 5 words. The man who built a career on knowing exactly what everything was worth had arrived at something that had no counteroffer, no lower price, no way to negotiate the terms. His son was dead. He could not buy him back. He could not find an angle on it. He could only do what he had apparently been doing since January 19th, 2024. Think about him every day. Say his name in public when it was appropriate. And keep running the business and the show and the life. Because that is what you do when you are Rick Harrison. And stopping is not a thing you know how to do. Did you know all of what Rick Harrison has been through? And what do you think the future of Pawn Stars